Good evening, all. Welcome to those of you that have just joined us from the waiting room. Good evening. I see that the waiting room is empty. Allow me to set off for this evening. Thank you, one and all. Thank you for joining us tonight, Thursday, the 19th of March, 2026. Tonight, we are here to learn about sovereignty. And we are thanking you for joining us for our Thursday educational lesson. Before I introduce you to this evening's educator, I'm going to read in our disclaimer. Dear people, we are sharing this presentation and related information for your private educational use only. Please note that this material is provided on the basis that the author and the publisher are not engaged in rendering legal or professional advice and assume no liability. Any decisions made or actions executed based on this material are ultimately at your discretion. As individuals, we each interpret and comprehend information uniquely, and the responsibility for how we use educational material lies with us. I trust that everyone reviewing this content has the wisdom to follow their own course. The choice and the implications are yours alone, with love, honor, gratitude, and integrity. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all warmly and hand you over to our fabulous educator, Cliff. Cliff, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sauke, and good evening to everyone. And I certainly hope everybody is feeling really great this evening because we're going to embark on an amazing journey together. Before we embark on this journey, I'd like to open with a prayer, and as a form of grounding and as a form of celebration towards our process and adventure moving forward. So let us take this moment to quiet our minds, settle our hearts, and feel the presence of the life within us. May we connect with the clarity, the strength, and wisdom that resides at the core of our being. May this time together open the doors of remembrance, allowing us to see clearly what has always been within us, untouched, unshaken, and eternal. With our hearts centered and minds open, we now turn our attention to the source of our remembrance, the inherent sovereignty, freedom, and authority that each man and woman carries within them, untouched by circumstance or condition. With that, I would like to welcome everyone. Tonight we begin the journey of remembering what we were never meant to forget. That every man and woman is born sovereign, free, and endowed with inherent authority. This session is not theory, it is remembrance. You will feel it. Okay, so let me start with this. You cannot know something has been stolen from you if you were never aware that you possessed it. And what was stolen are your human rights, gifted to mankind and womankind only by God. You were not given nothing. You were not given air or empty words. You were given a birthright from the ultimate King of Kings. This makes you sovereign. And tonight, we must state it plainly. The sovereign is under attack. Tonight I'll expose the plot and show the faces behind it. Because if we were unknowingly or unwittingly tricked into a contract, silently stripping us of our sovereign status, then by standard contract law, we must cancel the contract. And that is exactly the path we begin tonight. we're going to take an overview of the 4 pillars. These 4 pillars form the architecture of a living man's life: sovereignty, human rights, responsibility and accountability, and self-governance. They are not given by government, state, or corporation. They arise from existence itself, from God, the source of all authority. This presentation explores the foundational concepts that empower the people who are inherently the creditors, not the debtors. Let me clarify a definition used throughout history. There's been a confusion regarding the word human in certain dictionaries. So I bring clarity. In Black's Law Dictionary, the 4th edition, a human is defined as a member of the species Homo sapiens from the conception process to natural death. This definition places mankind and womankind firmly within the land jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of the living man or woman. This session examines the definitions, the historical bait and switch, where those rights were removed, and the practical implications for you personally and for all of society. You are born a sovereign. This is the truth that sits above all legislation, policy, and systems. Sovereignty is not acquired. Sovereignty is not granted. Sovereignty is inherent. You are born a sovereign. Undeniable fact. Our work here simply restores what you already are. The realization. So first and foremost, being a sovereign is an idea or belief or state of mind. You are born a sovereign. But as we move through life struggling to make ends meet, pursuing our dreams, raising families, many of us feel something is deeply wrong. And we are now beginning to comprehend what that something is. The highest sovereign on land is man or woman. Above man and woman, only God. This order is universal and undisputed. God, then man and woman, and then everything created after man: faculties, corporations, offices, legislation. Frederick Bastiat stated this clearly in the law, and we all feel the truth in it. So why in an era of abundance and capability do we struggle? Why do our rights feel limited? Why do systems dominate the very beings they were meant to serve? Something must be out of alignment. Something must be wrong. And tonight, we begin to identify it. The hierarchy of authority. Hierarchy matters. Source stands first. Man stands second, as a sovereign extension of God. Corporations, governments, agencies, all come afterwards. Let us take a deeper look at sovereignty. The sovereignty is the full right and power of an individual, a man or a woman, to govern themselves without external interference. As Bastiat wrote, we hold from God the gift that, as far as we are concerned, contains all others: life, physical, intellectual, and moral life. But life cannot support itself. He who has bestowed it has entrusted us with the care of supporting it, of developing it, and of perfecting it. To that end, He has provided us with a collection of wonderful faculties. He has plunged us into a midst of a variety of elements. It is by the application of our faculties to these elements that the phenomena of assimilation and appropriation, by which life pursues the circle that has been assigned to it, are realized. Existence, faculties, assimilation. In other words, personality, liberty, property. This is man. It is of these three things that it may be said, apart from all demagogic subtlety, that they are anterior and superior to all human legislation. It is not because men have made laws that personality, liberty, and property exist. On the contrary, it is because personality, liberty, and property exist beforehand that men make laws. So what then is law? As I've said elsewhere, and in the collective organization of the individual right to lawful defense. It is the collective organization of the individual right to lawful defense. There are different types of sovereignty. You get different types of sovereign states. You get the sovereign, you get an internal sovereign, you get a public sovereign. These are two different types of varieties of being a sovereign. You even get a sovereign state, or you get a sovereign country. Those definitions we will leave for another walk. Historically, sovereignty originated from the formation of nation states and legal doctrines asserting supreme authority. The word supreme authority has several meanings. Control, highest level of control or power. For example, the king held supreme authority over the entire kingdom. In leadership, a person with the ultimate decision-making power. For example, the king was the supreme authority in the kingdom. And in law, a recognized final arbitrator in legal matters. Example, the Supreme Court is the supreme in those legal matters. If we take a deeper look into the words authority and you break it up into author and iti, the word author in Black's Law Dictionary has the following meaning: one who produces by his own intellectual labor, applied to materials of his own composition, an arrangement or compilation new in itself. The suffix iti in Latin is used to form nouns from adjectives, referring to the state, property, or quality of conforming to the adjective description. On earth, God is considered the ultimate sovereign, holding paramount and supreme authority. In terms of human entities, there is no single individual or group that can be definitely declared the highest sovereign. Thus, we are all equal. While countries and their leaders hold significant power within their own borders and in international relations, their authority is ultimately derived from the people they represent, or limited by international law, agreements, and by limitations within the constitutions. The word right in the phrase human right means special, possessible benefit to which individuals are entitled. And there is a correlative duty on others, the governments, in relation to that benefit. Human rights are universally recognized moral principles or norms that establish standards of human behavior and are often protected by both national and international laws. These rights are considered inherent and inalienable, meaning they belong to every individual simply by virtue of being alive and breathing, regardless of characteristics like nationality, ethnicity, religion, or socioeconomic status. In Black's Law Dictionary, the word inalienable means not subject to alienation. For example, incapable of being taken away or transferred. The characteristic of those things which cannot be bought or sold or transferred from one person to another, such as rivers and public highways and certain personal rights. For example, liberty. The word to be entitled means to have a right or a claim to something by law or rules. In closing notes reflecting on the hierarchy of authority, existence, faculties, assimilation. In other words, personality, liberty, property. This is man or woman. These are anterior and superior to all human legislation. Laws exist because man exists, not the other way around. Many thinkers agreed. Boudin, Hobbes, Plato also understood supreme authority. And what is supreme authority? It is the capacity to author, to originate without subordination. This belongs to God first. And because you were created by God in the image of God, you carry the sovereignty by default. Then how do you make the whole world forget this? How do you make people believe that faculties, which do not breathe, are sovereign, and that man is a debtor, the subordinate? You change the definitions. You shift the narratives. You create systems of belief. And that is exactly what was done. The truth and the facts are born. You are born the sovereign, the creditors, the owners of a birthright. This is the turning point. Systems of control do not begin with weapons. They begin with beliefs. To shift the world into a false hierarchy, there must be an agenda, a plot, a system, a methodology, all designed to shape that perception. Fear becomes the tool. According to Mandel House, this is why the CIA was created, to control information, control the narrative, and instill fear. And the architects, Freemasonry, the Ku Klux Klan, and political operators like Truman and Pike Masonry and the Ku Klux Klan, enacted into action by none other than Harry S. Truman, the 33rd President of the United States, who held a long and deep-rooted connection with the Freemasonry, one that extended far beyond his presidency. Truman's journey in Masonry began in 1909, and his perception for the fraternity led him to the esteemed degree of a rank achieved in 1945. We examine these groups because they reveal the pattern: psychological manipulation, narrative control, division through fear, replacement of sovereign identity with controlled identity. Let's look deeper into the Freemasonry, the KKK, and the CIA. Here we see the Ku Klux Klan's Masonic origins. It was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, in 1866 by 6 Confederate officers. One of them, the first Imperial Wizard of the KKK, was a former Confederate general and a Freemason, Nathan Bedford Forrest. Albert Pike held the high office of Chief Justice of the KKK, while he was simultaneously Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite of Masonry in the southern jurisdiction. Everywhere we turn today, we are seeing the occult connections between the New World Order organizations, especially in those false religious denominations. The KKK was known as the Invisible Empire of the South. In 1866, General Forrest ordered the empire to disband because of the extreme violence. It was in 1915 that it was rebirthed. This time, another Mason, W.J. Simmons, was the architect. By the mid-1920s, they controlled some states, such as Indiana, from the courthouse to the state house. Almost all of the top officials who revived the Klan were also Masons, with a total of 5 million members. This is in the 1920s. Most of them Masons and white Protestants, with several senators and governors. By 1944, the KKK collapsed in a storm of corruption, murder, and torture. Today, there are a few thousand left, as recorded. I'm sure a lot more. They seem quite divided, functioning on grand wizardry of sorts. The Ku Klux Klan, from the Greek kuklos, which means circle or wheel, is like Masonry. It's a fraternal organization. This one grew out of the Civil War in America to protect and preserve the white race and ensure voluntary separation of the races, and even the extinction of ethnic races, Catholics and Jews. They are well known as the disguised hooded Klansmen, in their white sheets posing as ghosts of dead Confederate soldiers, with their blazing torches burning large wooden crosses in a circle to terrorize. We don't burn crosses, we light them, they claimed. And it is a religious celebration of ceremony, not an act of desecration. The Ku Klux Klan is an occult organization linked with Freemasonry, which was intended to demonize Americans, Africans, or anyone in the world who still believe in the Constitution or a Bill of Rights. The KKK and the unbiblical hatred for other people, as well-known hate groups, are despised by most Americans. Thus, it couldn't be more obvious to any thinking people that the KKK is a new world order organization. This is how sovereignty is removed, not by force, but by programming. The removal of your sovereign status did not happen by force. It happened through silent administrative processes, conditioning, and economic dependency. The agenda and plot well calculated at the time, was that the people would have to be turned from the creditor with rights to the debtor with benefits and privileges, unknowingly and unwittingly, of course. And if you think I'm joking, well, I'm not. This would be done via the formation of the Federal Reserve Board, enacting it and controlling the information and keeping the people sick. The moment man forgets who he is, systems are free to define him. Tonight, we reverse that. The architects of the system. These figures shaped the machinery that shifted man into a managed commodity. Take a good look. House, Wilson, and our fabulous roads. In 1913, Edward Mandell House helped select the founders of the Federal Reserve. He inherited influence over the Texas KKK and used it to build political power. He installed governors, influenced presidents, and shaped policy through manipulation. Around him were the House of Rockefeller, Morgan, Mellon, Vanderbilt, consolidating control. That's the agenda. Central banking, central intelligence, graduated tax, global governance, control of education, or should I say indoctrination, through foundations, conditioning through media, registration of man as biological property. Thus, the history is revealed as such. Edward Mandell House, originally Hayes, which became House, was born July 26, 1858 in Houston. He became active in the Texas politics and served as an advisor to the President Woodrow Wilson, particularly in the area of foreign relations. House functioned as Wilson's chief negotiator in Europe during the negotiations for peace during 1917 and 1919, and as chief deputy for Wilson at the Paris Peace Conference. He died on March 1938 in New York City. Edward and his father had friends in the Ku Klux Klan. The Klan dispensed vigilante justice after the Civil War. In 1880, a new legitimate group was in charge of dispensing justice in Texas, the Texas Rangers. Many of the Texas Rangers were members of the Klan. Edward was the new master. Edward gained their loyalty by stroking their egos. Edward would use his money and influence to try and make them famous. Edward eventually inherited the Texas Ku Klux Klan. Edward Mandell House helped to make 4 men governor of Texas. James S. Hogg, that's 1892. Charles A. Culbertson, that's 1894. Joseph D. Sayers in 1898. And S.W.T. Lanham in 1902. After the election, House acted as unofficial advisor to each governor. Hogg gave House the title colonel by promoting his house to his staff. Edward wanted to control more than Texas. Edward wanted to control the country. Edward would also do so by becoming a kingmaker instead of a king. Edward knew that if he could control 2 or 3 men in the Senate, 2 or 3 men in the House, and the president, he could control the country. Edward would influence the candidates from behind the scenes. The people would perceive one man was representing them, when in reality, an entirely different man was in control. House didn't need to influence millions of people. He need only influence a handful of men. Edward would help establish a secret society in America that would operate in the same fashion, the Council on Foreign Relations. Edward Mandell House was instrumental in getting Woodrow Wilson elected as president. Edward had the support of William Jennings Bryan and the financial backing of the House of Rockefeller's National City Bank. Edward became Wilson's closest unofficial advisor. Edward Mandell House and some of his schoolmates were also members of the Cecil Rhodes Round Table Group. The Round Table Group, the backbone of the secret society, had 4 pet projects: a graduated income tax, which is a fraud on the people, a central bank, a creation of a central intelligence agency, and the League of Nations. Between 1901 and 1913, the House of Morgan and the House of Rockefeller formed close alliances with the Dukes and the Mellons. This group consolidated their power and came to dominate other Wall Street powers, including Carnegie, Whitney, Vanderbilt, Brown Harriman, and Dillon Reed. The Round Table Group wanted to control the people by having the government tax people and deposit the people's money in a central bank. The group would take control of the bank, therefore having control of the money. The group would take control of the State Department and formulate government policy. And this would determine how the money was spent. The group would control the CIA, which would gather the information about the people, the script, and produce psycho-political operations focused at the people to influence them to act in accord with Round Table Group State Department policy decisions. The group would work to consolidate all of the nations of the world into a single nation with a single central bank under their control and a single international security system. Some of the first legislation of the Wilson administration, who signed into power the Federal Reserve Act 1913 in America and in South Africa in 1920, was the institution of the graduated income tax and the creation of a central bank called the Federal Reserve. An inheritance tax was also instituted. These tax laws were used to rationalize the need for legislation that would allow the establishment tax-exempt foundations. We would pay the taxes, they would not pay the taxes. The tax-exempt foundations became the link between the group members' private corporations and the university system. The group would control the universities by controlling the sources of their funding. The funding was money sheltered from taxes, being channeled in ways which would help achieve Round Table Group aims. You do not need to memorize the names. What matters is the pattern. The plot revealed. What appears at first glance. Looks very innocent, doesn't it? Well, what appears at first glance as ordinary political correspondence becomes, on deeper inspection, a clear plot against mankind and womankind. We see the evidence working 114 years later, right now in 2026. These mechanisms were created to manage resources. And the primary resource is you. Time for a bit of color. This looks interesting. When you read this, understand, this is not history. This is ongoing policy. Very soon, every African will be required to register their biological property into a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel the people to submit to our agenda, which will effect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every African will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Africans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. We'll beg them for it. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit. That's the birth certificate with the funds attached to it. And they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans. This literally was a mathematically calculated plan put together on that Jekyll Island expedition, that if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. There's your conspiracy theories. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every African a contributor to this fraud, which we shall call SASA. Without realizing it, every African will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every African will unknowingly be our servant. However, begrudgingly, the people become helpless and without any hope for their redemption. And we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against Africa. Edward Mandell House stated, every African will be required to register their biological property. They will be our chattel. I mean, these were their words. They will be our economic slaves through taxation. They will insure us for any loss. They will never figure it out. And we will use the office of the president to further this plot. This is the conversation. The sovereign man was turned into the commercial asset. The birth certificate And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. How they removed your sovereignty. As said in that 1912 discussion. Step 1. There we go. Register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people. That one move right there, that one move begins the entire chain. The birth registration, the assumed consent, the commercial conversation, taxation, pledging, loss of rights, administrative subjugation. But here's the good news, and here is the power. What was done administratively can be undone administratively. Tonight was part 1, the remembrance. We needed to remember. Next Thursday is part 2, the restoration. And trust me when I say this, part 2 is where everything changes. This is where the living man steps back into standing, cancels the silent contract, and corrects the record. I will see you there.
Thank you so very, very much, Cliff. And thank you, everybody. It has been wonderful. And we all look forward to Cliff's part 2. Thank you very much. And good night, all. Good night, beautiful people.